Well, hello everyone, and welcome to our 45-minute webinar, How to Automate Supply Chain Processes with RFID. The first half hour will be a discussion by our two speakers, but based on your engagement with lots of questions during the past RFID webinars, we dedicated the last 15 minutes to address these. Two housekeeping points before we get started. The session is being recorded, and you will receive a link over the next few days by email. Secondly, please submit your questions throughout the presentation in the Q&A section, and we will be addressing those in the last 15 minutes. For those of you just familiar with Barcodes Inc. and OCR Canada, I want to quickly introduce you to our new brand, Levada. First of all, we continue to offer the same range of products and services you know today. Our partnership with leading manufacturers gives you unrivaled access to the best devices on the market, enhanced by service and support to keep your organization moving forward. With over 200,000 customers worldwide, including 84% of the Fortune 500 served, Levada exists to elevate your potential by providing strategies, solutions, and services to power modern environments so you can rise as an enduring force in a world of motion. Levada combines our established expertise with 5 leading capabilities, including enterprise mobility, providing your workforce the power of technology with a secure, efficient, and scalable mobility foundation. Automation with vision and robotics. You can rely on our expertise in robotics and automation solutions to increase the efficiency, productivity, and profitability of your operation. And supply chain visibility with RFID. Get the digital DNA of everything in your supply chain with a full RFID solution of software, devices, and the world's best performing tags. Today's webinar will focus on supply chain visibility with RFID. Placed on points of transition, RFID technology can identify thousands of items per second and can achieve very high read accuracy. RFID automates tracking of shipments moving in and out of dock doors without direct line of sight, reducing the need for human intervention and manual scanning. To discuss how RFID can provide end-to-end visibility across your value chain, we couldn't ask for 2 better speakers to explore this topic with you. As a principal RFID solutions architect with Levada, Tom O'Boyle designs, integrates, and deploys RFID solutions for a wide range of industries, including supply chain, manufacturing, healthcare, education, and retail. With over 20 years of RFID experience, Tom has been an industry leader and early adopter of RFID technology. His work drove adoption of RFID solutions for wide area coverage, portal and dock door transactions, and software algorithms to improve read event data. John Cook has over 30 years of manufacturing and distribution experience. The last 5 years have been focused on building solutions that improve efficiency or quality with the use of RFID technology. John is located at the SLS office in Howell, Michigan, and has extensive experience with supporting enterprise-level companies with international supply chains. Thanks for joining us today, Tom and John. Please take it away, Tom.
Yeah, thanks, Edwin. Thanks for putting this together, and thanks to everyone for hopping on today. We really appreciate the time that you're applying to this webinar, and hopefully you get some insights out of it. Today on the webinar, we're going to be focused on a couple areas that we think are some of the appropriate areas to automate using RFID in your supply chain. In particular, we're gonna focus on shipping and receiving, and the shipping and receiving processes are wrought with some manual labor operations that we think that benefit from RFID automation. So we're going to spend some time kind of going through each area, the shipping area, the receiving area, some of the some of the functions that we see that can use some automation, and then some of the ways that we use that automation to benefit you as an organization. We will go through what we call a complete solution set. So, our complete solution set includes the use of software, tags, readers, and deployed in a proper manner to make sure that you're getting the ROI that you expect out of the system. So we'll go through that complete solution, what that means to you. We'll also spend a little bit of time, John in particular, will spend some time on the need for enterprise level software and what does enterprise grade or enterprise class software really mean, and how does that benefit you as a user. And then we'll also spend a little time on implementation. From an implementation standpoint, we're trying to make sure that we go through all the steps that you're going to need to go through to make this happen properly. What you'll find is it sounds a little ominous at first, but we actually try and make it pretty easy for you to get this complete and moved along. So those are our steps. Those are areas that we're going to spend some time with. I'm going to dive right into the shipping portion of it. And when we think about shipping, we're trying to make sure that we get a couple things correct. We want the right product on the right for the right order on the right truck going to that correct customer. So anything less than that equals a problem in the shipping world. So how does that happen today? As we go through customer applications and talk to customers and walk through their operations, we find that a lot of the steps that they have to take in order to validate that it's the right product has a tendency to be very labor intensive. There's a couple areas that people will spend some time in. Number one is if we're trying to track down to the item level, as an example, then we're going to want to make sure that all the items that are in the box match what the outside of the box says it has. So if there's supposed to be 10 widgets in the box, we want to make sure there's widgets in the box and that there's 10 of them. So some people will do a manual process to check and verify the contents of boxes. That's usually related to a spot check in some areas, but in other times it can be slightly automated. So they want to make sure that we got the right products in the box and the box count is correct. The next step we see people needing to do is be able to check to make sure the right box or carton gets onto the right pallet. Most of our customers we see today do build palletized loads to ship to their customers. That's not always the case. Some people will build floor-loaded containers, but most of the time it's palletized loads. When it's palletized loads, making sure that you put the right box on the right pallet and the count is correct for that pallet is really important. This is where I see an additional labor, either head count or at least a portion of a head count being applied to do either spot checks or 100% checks. Spot checks are more common than 100% just because of the labor involved, but that check will include checking the boxes to make sure that they can that they're the right part number, checking to make sure the quantity is correct, and in some cases it's just counting the boxes as they're stacked on. With some of the products, depending on how those pallets are built, many of the boxes are actually embedded inside in the middle of that pallet, where barcode scanning or some other technologies can't really be deployed to check those boxes. In those instances, we have customers taking an educated guess to say all the boxes on the exterior are correct, so we're gonna assume that the boxes on the interior are correct. That has a tendency to be one way that they do it. Another way is occasionally they will break down the pallets completely and do a double check on it. Either which way, it's very labor intensive to check to make sure that that box count is correct for the pallet. And then the last step in shipping is to make sure the right pallet goes onto the right truck. And some of those ways that they do that is I've seen where there is a person who's a kind of a lead who sits there and checks things off. We've seen where people will scan the barcode for the pallet as it's being loaded and then scan the barcode that's associated to the dock door. And then we've had others where they scan everything into the truck before they actually load them, and then they load them on. Um, some of them are have more problems than others, but all of them involve a form of labor that is something where we think automation might be able to be applied effectively. So, John, maybe you can talk a little bit about with those things that we see normally in the shipping operations, where where is RFID applied, and where does that seem to fit the best?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. So with RFID, the game changes a little bit, meaning that instead of using a barcode for all, or even human readable for validation of that quality, we have an electronic product code, and that product code is electronically written into the RFID tag or the label. And with radio frequency or RFID, we can read that label or capture that information no matter what the orientation. So it doesn't, we're not as sensitive to where the label's placed on the outer packaging in a manner that the operator can get to it easily or efficiently. That's not a concern anymore. And as long as the radio waves are able to get travel in and around the product, meaning that there's a little bit of airspace by the cardboard or just in the packaging, we can successfully read everything, and we can read it very, very quickly. As Edwin mentioned, it can be hundreds to thousands of items per second. So it's a very quick capture process. And the best part about RFID is that it actually works better while the product's moving. So versus scanning where it's stationary and taking a lot of space and time, we can now capture everything on that pallet as it's being moved from basically the packaging location into the trailer. We really don't need it to be staged because we're going to be capturing it as it's loading into the back of the trailer over the dock plate. So lots of benefits when we reduced or eliminated the need for space to stage material. We freed up those inspection or those loading operators from having to do kind of non-value added work and just capturing information that should have already been validated upstream during the pick and packing process. And then we're going to double check the quality so we can keep the quality within the building and not expose your customers to a quality issue. And we're doing that at the same time it's physically transitioning into the back of the vehicle. So we absolutely know that that product made it onto the truck. And all of this, being able to do it while it's in motion, faster and easier, it just improves your overall order to delivery time and especially your logistics time, where now you don't have to have a truck sitting there waiting for product to be staged and inspected prior to loading. We free all of that time back up. And then also from a dock door perspective, a lot of customers because they're being more efficient in their shipping process, they don't need as many dock doors. So for those customers that are growing and running out of space or availability of doors, RFID can be a huge enabler to keep the same doors and get better utilization. So, and as Tom mentioned, a lot of stuff was done on paper or through a scanning application. But now we have a digital twin of the shipment and all of its contents. So your customer now can not only receive a paper packing list or shipper, they also will now have an electronic list that will help them in their receiving process.
That's great. That's awesome.
So just to carry on with that thinking, you know, without an electronic packing list, what do people have to deal with at receiving? One is the effort to receive. So as Tom mentioned, it's kind of the reverse of the shipping process where they may have to take off the outer packaging so that they can get to and inspect every carton or box that's on the pallet. They have to validate or assume quantities received. And generally, they mark that up on a paper packing list so that if there's any discrepancies, they can give it to the receiving clerk and have them call the manufacturer or supplier and get them to remediate it. The quality gets impacted at that point, meaning if you're taking off that protective packaging or opening boxes, there's a large opportunity for you to damage the products inside, or as it's in transit to the put away location, now it's not secured on the pallet and things can fall off and get damaged. So similar to shipping, if you know all the space and time that takes to do a manual count or scan it again, you know, that just delays that inventory from being able to put away. And in the long run, that may lead to a problem with inventory, meaning when product is delayed coming into you, you tend to bump up your minimum on-hand quantity. So now you have extra clutter, additional racking, and you're going to affect your financial inventory turns. So lots of problems with slowing down the receiving process. And then from a claims standpoint, you know, when you're disputing with your supplier or a customer is disputing to you over a claim, and you're talking about quantity, it really becomes down to an argument of who wants to be right. And there's no definitive list of what was really received or what was really shipped and what was really received, because it's just based on people's interpretation of the quantity that should have been shipped.
Yeah, that's
Tom,
true. So one of
help
the
us out.
yeah,
How do we
absolutely.
receive better?
Yeah, I was going to say from a receiving standpoint, one of the benefits from our it's actually even easier than the shipping side. You know, what we have a tendency to see is people who have deployed RFID for receiving functions. What we end up setting up is what we call dock door portals or RFID readers around the dock doors. Those readers, from a system standpoint, if you tell it at dock door number one, we're about to receive a specific order, it can now check off those items and receive them as those pallets are being moved out of the truck and onto the floor. So what we have a tendency to see is people are literally unloading the truck the way they always did, and they're able to, from a systematic standpoint, check the quantity that's on the pallet, verify the part numbers that are associated to the order, make sure the order quantity matches what the shipper said that they sent either in the ASN or through the completed order. And more importantly than that, they can start putting it away or using it right away. They do not have to get it all off the truck, let the truck release, go through the whole checking process, then start trying to put it away. So people have a tendency, and a receiving standpoint with RFID, be able to just pull it off the truck. The system is checking the things off as they're being pulled off, and they can either go put it away correctly or be notified in cases of it's something that either needs to get cross-docked through, or it's something that they've been waiting for an immediate order, being able to direct that product straight to the spot that it needs to go to in order for it to get shipped out. So RFID will allow you to receive it faster, allow you to eliminate the check quantity process part of it, and more importantly than that, eliminate kind of all the scanning associated with that receiving process and all the manual labor that gets used inside of all those processes, and eliminate some of the space potentially with the ability to move your product faster because you already know it's here and it's available in inventory.
Yep. So just to recap how that plays out. Imagine a supplier. In this case, it's Tom O'Boyle's Tea Kettle Company, and they're doing their outbound shipping to a distribution center. It's my distribution is John Cook's cooking supply distribution center, and before Tom ships, you know, he has an opportunity with RFID to actually serialize each and every kettle to make sure that when it goes in the packaging, it's the correct product in the carton. And then serialize again as they're grouped onto a pallet or a shipping container, that everything in this group, all these items belong to this group on this pallet, because now we're going to be moving the product around as a pallet. And then as we're loading onto the shipment, that serialized pallet identifier helps us validate what's getting loaded onto the truck. And we can go all the way back to validate against the sales order for both the item, make sure it's the correct item and it's not an incorrect product, the correct quantity, and also that it's going on a trailer that or a truck that has the correct carrier or delivery route. So we're able to do all these validations, right product, right quantity, right carrier, right route. Then as it travels through the distribution center, we're just reversing all that, where now it's an expected list of contents. So as you're unloading, you can validate each pallet was supposed to be dropped off at that location. You're going to be able to look at the serialized list of what's on the pallet and then validate against the order quantity and make sure there's no mixed items in there that you weren't expecting. And then as it's confirmed, the big game is both the distributor and the manufacturer have visibility on what's being received and what was successfully received at John's distribution in this case. So they're going to have good visibility on what was successful. And if there was a discrepancy, it's going to be very, very obvious about which product didn't make it onto the truck, or if it was on the truck and the receiving party just didn't find it when they were unloading it, meaning that the claims process now becomes not a quantity discussion, but rather which one of the items didn't make it onto the truck. And you can look at the event history and discover why that item wasn't successfully delivered.
Yeah, one of the big benefits when it comes to the claims process is we have data on both sides of the equation. So when it comes to the shipping side, we literally have a serialized number for every unit that went onto that truck. So we can definitively say, based upon the RFID system, here's all 100 pieces that were on that truck, and here's the list of those serial numbers. And on the receiving side, as those items are being received, we see those same exact numbers come through. So we're able to match them up one for one. So we literally get the ability to match by serial number if we want to, down to that minute level, which in the terms of claims adjustments, if somebody says, I shipped you 100, here's the exact 100 I shipped you. And on the receiving side, they can say, oh, we did get all 100 of those pieces because we saw the RFID system actually read all of those serial numbers attached to it. And if they didn't read all those serial numbers attached to it, then those are the discrepancies to be looking for.
Yeah. And all those discrepancies, one, the order wasn't fulfilled on time, maybe impacting downstream customers. Secondly, you got to recreate or remanufacture that item. And then thirdly, pay for the logistics to bring it, and maybe even expedite it. So, those claims cost, whatever percentage they may be of the order can be significantly reduced.
Yeah, for sure. And there's one other part of that claims process. Some of the supply chains have what they call a chargeback process, which means that if you, as a shipper, do not ship correctly for whatever the reason, they will actually start charging you back, or basically not paying a percentage of your invoice based upon those errors. So the more errors we can eliminate up front, the less chargebacks people get, besides the fact that they still have to fix the problems that were originated in the first place, whether it's a short shipment or to get the wrong items back and send the right products to them. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we would use to make all this stuff happen. The shipping and receiving verification process is a standard use case for us here at Levada and SLS, where we use various components of our solution set to make this happen. On the shipping side, we might, if we're taking it down to the item level, we might deploy RFID tables or tunnels to be able to validate that the contents of the box are correct. So we would use those components with our RFID tags at the item level to make sure that we can ensure the right product, the right count, and the right SKU is in the box. At the pallet, when we're trying to validate the pallet, what we would be doing is we're actually looking to try and make sure that we know how many of those cases of those particular items are on that pallet. And there we would deploy RFID readers in a pallet wrap process is the most typical spot. Sometimes it's a big oversized tunnel, but most of the time it's a pallet wrapper system where we put a reader, and as that pallet is spinning around, we're literally reading those tags over and over again to make sure that we can say exactly what's on that pallet. And then we, at the dock doors, we would deploy dock door portal systems. And those dock door portal systems are meant to read items as it goes onto the load plate and not outside of the load plate at all. So we're trying to make sure that we're reading product as it's going into the truck at the shipping point. So we deploy basically our software, our tags, and various different read points in the shipping area. On the receiving side, it's a little bit easier because most of the time we're trying to validate the right pallet because our partner has already validated the items that are in the box and what boxes were on the pallet. Now we're trying to typically just read the pallets as it's coming through at the receiving door. So there we're deploying our portals to make that happen. Same pieces of software, it's just different functionality that we turn on basically based upon that use cases. But all of it can be combined together in a supply chain version where both the shipper and receivers can see or make available that data set for each other to be able to view. So when we say it's a complete digital DNA solution with RFID, what we really mean is we have the ability to track down to the lowest common denominator, lowest level, and we're going to use various different components of our solution set to make that happen. First and foremost, we'll have our SLS View software, which actually runs our RFID devices. It really optimizes the read zones, and it ensures that we have consistent, exact coverage and read rates that we need going forward. And we'll combine that with our SLS devices, whether that's a portal at a dock door or a pallet wrap system or a tunnel or a table. Those SLS devices are all using our wave antenna technology, which is one of our methods to actually get the read accuracy up and being consistent. But coupled with that is our SLS RFID tags. So we've designed specialty tags. We have about 6 to 8 different form factors that we use based upon our use cases that we see most consistently. And by far the biggest use cases we have is in the supply chain operations, where we're actually tracking items to cases, cases to pallets, and pallets onto trucks. So those tags are optimized to give us the best performance to make sure that we're actually couple that with our devices and our software, we're able to consistently give you the read performance you need in order to get the ROI that we're all expecting.
Yeah. Just from an integration perspective, the services we provide around the solution are solution architects like Tom, who's designed and implemented hundreds and hundreds of RFID solutions. So he's going to make sure it's successful for your particular process and your products. Secondly, we also have engineers that are engaged to really look at the physical dynamics of RFID and make sure they're going to be successful when RFID antennas are installed and the surrounding environment is going to perform the way that we expect it to. And in the end, any device that's used in the solution, RFID-enabled readers or handhelds or printers, we automatically register them into what's called our TrueView system, and that allows our support agents, True Support Agent, to be able to assist you with any hardware, software issue, or with just general maintenance. From a software perspective, I'm just going to dive into this briefly, but the SLS View software, it's actually multiple platforms. We have software running on the readers and in the handhelds. with the printers and in the integration to your ERP or your WMS system. And this software was purpose-built for RFID. So when I started where we built the software specifically where we wanted to RFID enable a business process. So that allows us to deal with the technology as well, where we have to capture a high volume of products. As Edwin mentioned, we can capture between hundreds and thousands of items per second. We've also designed it to read a collection of items. So when you're loading a full pallet, we're going to read everything, but we're going to be able to discern them down to a single inventory event. So when we create a report or we share that event to your ERP, WMS, or MES system, it's really a single event, even though we may have interacted with the tag hundreds of times. And then all of this solution, it's designed around a standards organization called GS1, and they're responsible for things such as barcoding, electronic product codes, and even integration, where they've created industry standards that can be used internationally. And we have designed and followed those standards end to end, from reading the tag, what we encode in the tag, to sharing those events outwards across different systems. SLS View is also configuration based, meaning that we align the solution to your process and your naming conventions through configuration. We do not have custom code that's specific to each implementation. It's a common code base for all the customers.
And let me talk a little bit about the SLS wave antenna. I'm just going to spend a couple seconds here, but one of the key points is it is one of the first antennas that was ever designed specifically for RFID. Most of the other antennas were point-to-point communication antennas that emanated energy from one single point on them, and then it spread out. And what we found, and myself having been doing these things even before the wave antenna was around, is we had to overshoot the area that we wanted to cover in order to make sure that we had coverage, which meant that we got reads we didn't want. And what we really found is with the wave antenna, we could really control the energy, and we'd be able to read the entire height of a pallet, or actually of a dock door, at a consistent pattern all the way across the dock door without shooting into the next dock door. So the SLS wave antennas has really helped us optimize these processes to make sure that we're not reading tags that we don't care about, and only are focused on the tags that we do care about in the read cell. And a little bit about how we kind of bring this to you in your operations. First and foremost, we spend our time understanding your business objectives. If we're trying to automate the receiving function and the shipping functions, then we're going to spend our time to make sure we understand what you do there today, and what are areas that we could maybe automate using RFID. We'll do some of that work over the telephone with our solutions architects, but in some cases we go on site. As an example, just so happens that earlier in the week, John and I went on site to a customer to try and walk through their processes to make sure that we understood it exactly how it's operating, and we could tailor our software deployments to match what they're trying to do. And we will do things that we call proof of concepts, which is just our ability. Sometimes there's a need to do a test to see if we can read the tags the way we expect them, or if we need to set up like a mobile pallet reader or some other of our tools to see how well we're going to be able to do some inventory processes. And then, of course, we have our group of to actually do the complete deployment. That includes our project managers, that includes our solutions architects, our systems engineers, software engineers, all tied together to make sure the deployment happens the way we anticipate it, and you go live the way you expected, and we have all the support that you need as you've deployed the system and you're starting to gain your ROI.
Hey, thanks very much, Tom and John, for sharing your insights. So now it's time for them to answer your questions. So please enter these in the Q&A area. Now, we look forward to following up with you to discuss how RFID can help your business. So if you'd like to receive an evaluation from Tom and his team to learn how RFID can provide end-to-end visibility across the value chain, or you would like us to complete an ROI calculation for your organization, please send us an email. So let me kind of go to the questions here and pick it up, John and Tom. Can RFID be used along with metal sheets or cable-based products?
So I'll take that one, John. So
Yep.
the answer is yes. RFID tags, we have to use the right tag based upon metal products. So in particular, if it's metal sheets or if it's cables, we have to use what we call an on-metal version of the RFID tags. And those on-metal tags are a little bit different than your standard RFID tag in that they have the proper antenna and in a what we call a spacer to actually separate the chip away from that metal. But we've been able to successfully deploy, in particular on cabling operations. I've actually done that a couple of times in the past. So we're able to do that pretty well. On metal sheets, it would probably be something that we'd want to test, but theoretically, I don't have a problem with it.
Now, Tom, you mentioned that barcode scanning works sometimes. So do you work with clients that use both barcode scanning and RFID, or do you need to choose?
Yeah, so most of the time in the past, what we've seen is really it's a hybrid approach to which technology they're using. There's an occasion when we're going to want to use barcode scanning to perform a transaction. And I'll just use an example. We might easily, for selecting which order we're about to ship out, it might be easier for us to barcode scan that order ID into the system as opposed to somebody selecting it from a list or typing it in. So we might use barcode just in that fashion and then use RFID to read everything. But in the cases of, and we've had this happen where somebody's had a network problem and the RFID readers are not operational, what we find is customers will still have a barcode system as the deployment kind of backup. So in that particular case, they kind of shift back to what they used to do before RFID, and then might scan that pallet into the system as a whole. So it's prudent to always have, if you look at an RFID tag, we always have a barcode, human readable, and RFID value embedded into all of them so that we can use human eyes, we can use a barcode scanning or an RFID reader in those scenarios.
Yes. And just to complement, Tom, what you said, I had mentioned that we follow standards end to end. And one of the reasons those standards exist is so that you can use either technology, meaning that when we look at, let's say a unified product code like the UPC barcode you find on all your groceries or stuff you buy at a store, the equivalent electronic product code represents the same information. So from a system perspective, whether we scan the barcode or read the electronic product code, you get the same answer. And it's very, very important in an RFID project to keep that interoperability there, because some people in your supply chain may only have scanning as an option, and other partners may have RFID as an option. So, you want to enable that product over its whole life cycle to be interacted with, whether it's with a barcode scanner or an electronic product code RFID label. So we always try to support a dual technology strategy.
Nice. Now, both of you have been around for decades, and RFID, quite frankly, has been around for decades. So if somebody would have looked at RFID maybe 5 years ago, why should they look at it again today?
I'll take that one. So I have been around quite a while. I've been doing this for quite a bit. And what has really evolved over the last probably 5 to 7 years in particular has been our ability to read tags at a better rate, for lack of a better term. So tags themselves have become more sensitive, so we can actually hear them a little bit better. Readers have become more sensitive. And from a software perspective, we've gotten better at our filtering and our read control. So the combination of our antennas, the tag sensitivities, the reader sensitivity, and our software, we're able to be way more consistent these days than we ever were before. And that consistency means that as those pellets are being loaded onto a truck, right? What we don't want is we don't want a pellet going through that we didn't see from an RFID perspective. The operator knows it, now they have to stop and barcode scan it. So what we find is in the last 5 to 7 years in particular, we have really upped our game where people are in, almost never see those problems associated with those issues, where in the past they would expect to see 1 or 2 problems per truckload.
We're getting some more questions in here, so I'll keep going. Kind of a follow-up to the first question regarding barcodes and RFID tags applied, across the board. So, thing like container labels, would you go with RFID tags there, or do they normally remain barcodes?
Yep. Today, a lot of companies and logistics partners will use the SSCC 18 barcode, and it's kind of, if you look at one and there's some brackets in the front that say 01, which indicates that this barcode is an SSCC for a container. And that's really important, meaning when we RFID enable something, the electronic product code keeps that same information, meaning we recognize that what type of asset it is. It's not product, it's a container. That's what that 01 indicator on the barcode does for you. And RFID preserves it as well with an encoding type. And then all 18 characters of that serial number are stored on the electronic product code as the serialized asset. And so you can go back and forth. So containers are probably the best example of interoperability between electronic product codes and barcodes from a logistics standpoint, and then, from an item standpoint, anything sold in a retail store or grocery store.
So I realized myself, we spoke a lot about dock doors. So one question came in, if you only use RFID, called tunnels here in the question, to read the tags, or can you create, platforms with RFID scanners built on them? So could you maybe touch on the other devices we have beyond dock doors, real high level?
Yeah, for sure. So when we look at our different use cases, we deploy RFID readers in a number of different ways. One of them is what we call the mobile pallet reader. That happens to be literally a palletized unit. So it's a reader with a battery system in it with antennas and a wireless infrastructure connectivity, so that we can actually do cycle counting as it moves through. So we've deployed it in that manner. We've deployed RFID readers on top of robots to actually go around and do cycle counting. We have RFID readers that are deployed that are mounted onto walls. They're actually, flush mounted onto walls. And then, we have different RFID reader and antenna combinations that we'll use where we can't really mount a portal, but we can't, or a tunnel because of space and size, but we're just trying to read, as an example, in a small area on a little piece of conveyor. So, so we've got lots of different form factors that we'll use depending upon what the read zone, as we call it, looks like.
Great. And I know we've reached the end of the webinar. I know that there's quite a few more questions. So I know the speakers have a few more minutes, so we can keep going, and please keep submitting those. So question about tags, and especially, can we reuse them? So can they be removed? So are tags reusable, removable? And then the second question was cheaper than before.
Yep.
So
So
go ahead,
you can answer that one, Tom, if you want, about different types of tags.
Yeah. So reusable, removable. So on certain products, now let's use containers as an example. Those containers are reusable. So we put an RFID tag on the container. That RFID tag it stays permanently with that container, and it keeps on cycling through the system as it's being utilized. That's the spot where the RFID tag is being used over and over and over again. I have had some customers who will take and put an RFID tag on like a paper carrier, and they apply that, or they put that into like a tote or a container, and then when the container's done, they take it out and they reuse it again. We've seen that deployed. But most of the time, RFID tags are put permanently on product, and they're being utilized in that manner, where it stays on a product. We have not had any significant success with somebody obviously using like an adhesive back label and then trying to take it off and put it on another spot with the adhesive on it. That hasn't worked as well. There are a couple cases where we've used magnets to hold a tag on, and those tags then are being used and applied with magnets and then being pulled off and being reapplied to something else down the road so that they can be reused. But those tags have a tendency to be heavy duty tags, going through like a paint booth or like an oven, and have to be able to withstand all of those elements. And those tags are, from a cost standpoint, they're always measured in dollars versus cents, so they're pretty expensive.
This one is a good one for you, John.
Yep.
Can your SLS software generate automatically packing lists, shipping manifest, just from reading a collection of RFID labels that are applied to items?
Yeah, we can generate, generally we're involved with the content. So generating an itemized list with the item and the quantity, we do that often because we end up publishing to the ERP system or WMS system of the contents that were listed. But generally the printing still is performed, like the printing of the shipper or a printed copy of the packing list is often still performed by the ERP because there's other information such as delivery instructions or order information or carrier information that we don't really have to deal with from an RFID perspective. So often the printing of those lists is done the way it's done today, but we're now improving the contents of the list because now we can not only provide item and quantity, but if you wanted, we can provide an itemized list, especially of the containers with each of their serial numbers. So we can generally improve the packing list with serialized information and then also confidence that everything on there actually got on the trailer.
Nice. I bet you guys have heard this one scenario. Warehouse operator, but not all vendors are using RFID. So how do you phase in RFID when not all your vendors are, or they have a varying degree of readiness to go that route?
Yeah, common problem. So part of our solution is to enable printing and encoding of RFID labels. So for products that are inbound material that doesn't have RFID on it, we can receive that carton and generate RFID labels for that carton or all the products in it. And that allows you to cover off suppliers that don't RFID enable their product or haven't got there yet. That's a pretty common strategy. And that helps, right? Because we're getting an RFID serialized identifier on the product at the beginning of its life cycle, meaning that we're now going to be able to read that not only upon receipt or shortly after receiving and put away through inventory cycle counting, through picking, packing, and shipping again. So the idea of getting a serialized identifier on your product early in its life cycle lets us collect all that history. And also it helps support the previous process. So if you're trying to guarantee quality, it's best to do it in station or within area. And so because RFID doesn't require a lot of human interaction and it's low cost, it's easier to put in multiple read points. So now we can interact with that product more often. With scanning, you hesitate to do that because it involves extra labor and time. With RFID, those aren't problems anymore, they're solutions. So Now we can read that product more often. And if it happens to, if you happen to get a product in and somehow the operator circumvents going through the read zone, that's okay. We're going to read it at the next read point because it's probably not much further down the process. So the number of interactions can increase, just improving your visibility all the way from receipt to the end of the process. But we often help suppliers either become RFID enabled, or we compensate for it. And after the receiving process, we put an RFID label on their carton or their product.
Yeah,
Nice.
I want to add to that, John. You know, one of the things that you mentioned is absolutely true. Once we tag an item, especially in the early stages, the more often we read that tag, the better your ROI has a tendency to be.
Mm-hmm.
So if that tag costs you whatever it costs you, if you were able to use that tag 7 or 8 times through your process as opposed to 1 or 2 times, what you'll find is your ROI will be a lot faster and you'll be a lot happier from an operations standpoint because you're going to gain that visibility with very little cost. You have some infrastructure cost to put in the hardware, but there's no operational cost after that.
All right, let's do one last one. So we have our own internal application to track movement of pallets. Can we integrate RFID readability into our own management system?
Yes, absolutely. And very often this is what we're doing, meaning your ERP or WMS or inventory system is the system of record for financially managing that pallet or that product. And so often what we're doing when we interact with it, interact with that RFID label, we're publishing it as a move event or as a completed pallet event or a completed shipment or completed receiving event. So the idea is that most of the time we are integrating these events back to an ERP or WMS system or an MES system to confirm what was observed as it physically moved through that area. So almost all the time, every event is published to support an existing system, just with better visibility and confidence.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, John and Tom, how I can throw any question at you and you have an answer for it. So that talks about your experience, and I appreciate you sharing your insights today with the audience. And thanks to the audience for attending. Look forward to seeing you at the next webinar. Have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.
Yep. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.